As of 2020, a recent survey shows 45% of comic fans are female, marking the highest percent of female fans since the comic book industry first began printing in the 1930s. This growth reflects the rise in female comic creators. However, while many female creators publish award-winning work for the comic book industry, they are always a minority. According to data from 2011, the percentage of female comic book creators was 11%, compared to the most recent data from 2018, which was 16%. This marks a historic achievement for female comic book writers. Despite this, however, women in the comic book industry are faced with many challenges. Therefore, in this presentation, I will focus on the main challenges women face in the comic book industry, such as harassment, the gender imbalance, sexism, and the exclusion of women. My name is Shada Nash, and this is my presentation about women in comics. Harassment. In 2017, female staffers from Marvel went out together for milkshakes. When Heather Antos posted a picture to Twitter, she received hateful messages calling her a fake geek girl and the women SJWs, meaning social justice warrior, a term often used by anti-feminist types to attack people they see as trying to push a political correct social agenda. The messages were orchestrated by an online hate group named Comicsgate. The group believes the comic book industry contains too much political messaging and diversity in comics remain responsible for the decline in comic book sales. They believe that the 16% of female comic book creators, people of color creators, and LGBT creators are ruining an industry where 83% of men hold the positions responsible for creating a majority of published comics. They disregard the data and relentlessly target the minority comic book creators, and women face the brunt of that harassment. This leads me to my next point, the gender imbalance. Men dominate the comic book industry, creating a strong gender imbalance that makes entering the industry a daunting task. While anyone can submit their work to DC or Marvel for a job opportunity, who they choose to hire remains clear. Tim Hanley, an author and comic book historian, collected the data of male to female credit in each comic book published in July through December of 2018. As you can see, the graph displays the clear gender imbalance from each position in both Marvel and DC. The importance of developing gender equality in the comic book industry is to protect women from receiving harassment like Heather Antos and to combat against sexism. Sexism. In an interview with Sci-Fi Wire, comic book artist and writer Colleen Doran recalls her experience as the only female artist to attend art shows for comics. "I swear to God I heard this, and from more than one editor, that women can't draw because women are not visual, and because they're not visual and cannot process visually, they can't tell a story, and this is why girls don't like comics." Typically, men in the comic book industry feel secure in their positions. Despite the numerous allegations against them, they hardly face consequences for their actions. For example, how DC Comics turned a blind eye to the women Scott Lobdell, a comic book writer, harassed during the decade he worked at the company. The earliest account of Lobdell's sexual assault took place in 2013. Mary Naomi, a comic book artist, agreed to speak for a panel composed of LGBT cartoonists. She sat next to Lobdell, who is not in the LGBT community, and he repeatedly targeted her with sexual innuendos, asked her grossly inappropriate questions about her sexuality, and after the panel ended, only apologized to her husband for his behavior. Mary Naomi published her experience in an essay, and despite changing his name, people quickly realized it was Lobdell. Although he apologized for his actions and said he would learn from this experience, he would go on to sexually harass 3 more women in 2018 and 2020. DC did not suspend or fire Lobdell for his multiple accounts of harassment. Instead, he stepped down from his writing position at DC and left after the newer allegations came out. Sexism, gender imbalance, and harassment all stem from the key problem women face in comics: exclusion. Sexism. After looking at the data of female comic creators, the instances of harassment, and the examples of sexism in the comic book industry, the exclusion of women is the source of these challenges. However, some argue that this is not the case, like comic book writer and creator of renowned series Spawn, Todd McFarlane, who said in an interview with PBS in 2013, "I've got two daughters, and if I wanted to do something that I thought was emboldened to a female, I probably wouldn't choose superhero comic books to get that message across." While writers like Alyssa Rosenberg object. These arguments ignore that superheroes don't actually exist, and that the production of superhero comics is not actually a biological function determined by whatever bodies we're born with. When an industry lacks diversity, especially in a medium that focuses on storytelling, they lose the opportunity to connect with people. The sole reason the comic book industry has survived the test of time lies in the ability to evolve with each generation. However, if the comic book industry continues to exclude women, the 45% of women who consider themselves comic book fans will fall lower and lower. The solution? Hire more female comic creators. The importance of women in the comic book industry means representation in movies and TV. You may have noticed that comics continue to be adapted to movies like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel. When young girls see these movies and see the characters overcome the challenges that they face, they see themselves overcome the challenges too, inspiring a generation of girls that believe they can do anything they set their minds to. Therefore, the comic book industry must hire more women to their companies in order to survive this new era of female fans. Thank you all for watching. I hope you took away something from the comic book industry from my presentation. I know I did just from doing research on it, and I definitely surprised myself, both in a good way and bad way. But here is my works cited, and I hope you all have a good day.